Welcome back to the Howl. Really excited for this third episode here. Basically, in this show, we just talk with the who's who of SRSU. That's faculty, that's staff, that's students, and that's people that have a big influence in this place. And we just pick their brains, get to know who they are, talk about events, departments, anything really on brand. With this episode, I derived a lot of enjoyment, maybe more enjoyment than I should have, just because I'm really fond of this individual, the way his mind works, the way he talks, and he's someone I really look up to as well. Just someone who has a lot of institutional knowledge, wealth of knowledge in general. It's just always really fun and really encouraging to catch him in a conversation when you can. Kendall Craig's been here for decades, and he's seen a lot of the ins and outs of this university. He got one of his degrees here, and we actually go back a little bit. I got to know him even as a student. We met during a jam session while I was playing for the theater group, and just one late night, he showed up with his guitar and he started jamming, and it was really cool. I didn't know who he was, but the next day you just see him with his messenger bag and offering ginger chews, and you're like, oh, well, that's Kendall. Kendall Craig was really a pleasure to talk with during this episode. Got to pick his brain. I never really asked him a lot of questions about, his life and where he came from and things like that. And so it was really nice to get that information. There's a lot of shout outs in this episode. So if you have knowledge of Sul Ross, prior to this decade or the last, this is the one you'll want to watch to hear those names, even some current staff and faculty. And it was just a pleasure talking with him, talking about educational philosophies, talking about what he does within his work, which is a lot to explain, but I think we boiled it down pretty well. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. Here's Kendall Craig. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with that interview.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I am one of the counselors here at Sul Ross State University in our Counseling and Accessibility Services office. In our office, we offer individual counseling, group counseling, we set up accommodations for students with disabilities, and we serve as a campus contact for both on and off-campus referrals and resources. If you find yourself in a bind and you're not sure where to go, step into our office, Ferguson Hall, room 112. We'll either have the answer or know where to send you. You have chosen to attend a relatively small university in a small West Texas town, and with that, a unique setting where we make it our business to look out for each other. Students here are encouraged to check in with classmates, neighbors, and acquaintances. It is this practice that sets us apart from other campuses and larger universities. It is not uncommon to have a student walk a student into the counseling office when concerned. If you are coming from a larger city, you might be accustomed to more programmed ways of responding and interacting. Out here, we make the time to pause, engage, and question. We hope that you find that this value is built into the fabric of our way of life. If you are a newcomer to West Texas, we welcome you to our region, and we hope that you too assimilate into our shared values of looking out for each other. Welcome to the last frontier. Welcome to the Counseling and Accessibility Services office at Sul Ross State University.
All right. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today's a very special guest here. I always enjoy talking with him, and I look forward to this conversation we're about to have. Mr. Kendall Craig, welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy that you're happy to be here. We're going to talk a lot about, your time here and what you do, but I always like to get to know, just from past life experience, what you've gone through in life and how you ended up in the position that you're at now. And I think you have a unique sort of background because you're actually one of the first people that I'm interviewing that has attended Sul Ross and has that sort of introspection and that perspective to be able to, talk about the good old days, or to kind of have that whole cohesive timeline. And so starting out, going from high school to college, and eventually coming out here, what was that like for you?
Sure. Is that one of those standard things you're supposed to do? Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Podcast tropes, for sure.
Yes. Sure. So, although I suspect sharing some similarities with other folks who have actually done an attendance out here or with partner schools or something like that, mine may be a little peculiar, because at the time that I had finished up high school, which by the way was very close by, it was at Midland High School there in Midland. I didn't even know that Sul Ross existed.
Right.
I knew that the Big Bend region existed. We'd come out with family road trips and even I think kind of like a natural history agenda angle for at least one of those.
Right.
But I never put it together that the university was a thing that would make sense for me selfishly with my selfish motives. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until after I'd finished up at A&M and it came up as sort of a lower rat race leveled opportunity for a variety of experiences in the natural history world, and it just happened to be one that was the complete opposite of what I was dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I bet that part of it may be a little bit different, maybe more of a trade-up than a double down. Sure. In terms of some other feed-in experiences. So I'd finished up marine sciences degrees at A&M at Galveston, and had kind of a crisis moment. I was suddenly in a position where I was like, actually I really like all elements of natural history, but it was clear to me that I wasn't going to be very comfortable in the A&M politics and pricing and schemings and things. And I was still at the point where I was like, I haven't actually touched these things. I'm glad I've had a good experience through all that, but I didn't actually know what real things could be part of that experience. So I very much came out here with the idea of, I want to see what research is actually like, because it was surprisingly, after all those years, already a career academic type, still hadn't touched enough things. And Sul Ross, at that time, was the perfect place for that. In fact, I want to say that, to the chagrin of many researchers, there were very few things that happened that I didn't end up influencing, at least the things that were right outside my door. Mm-hmm. And that included all kinds of arthropod studies, which are a special interest for me anyway, but also bird studies, things that are considered good guy projects. In fact, my master's work, I finished up dealing with Texas horned lizards, which are, a good guy kind of a project. That's not the way I started. Uh-huh. I was doing mostly things that were involving evil.
Right, the depths.
So it was nice to have that change.
Okay, so it sort of opened up a lot of those avenues of interest and study and research and things like that.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Now, by the time, though, that I was starting with Sul Ross, I would still say that I was, at least the way that we think of those cohorts in those times, I was still probably pushing a non-traditional student paradigm. I had some very specific objectives, even if they were very vague. They were like, I want to be involved with these research elements, and the other things, the good class size, the unusual topics lumped in with curricula, that was sauce for the goose. It wasn't the other way around. Mm-hmm. So, I think that was probably perplexing for a number of the folks that I was pursuing a degree with.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think having those sort of broadening moments and those things kind of opening up lend itself to a much more enrichment kind of going forward. And I think that's really cool, especially coming from, the A&M system. You're going out there in Galveston. You wanted to change the scenery. Boy, did you get it, And I think it's also refreshing that from that point on, which year did you start attending Sul Ross?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I have to lie effectively. I can tell you that I relocated to the area in '95. Mm-hmm. 1995.
Yeah,
Do I need to specify that? Some of our,
I think we're okay.
Okay.
I think they can. If not, we'll put it in the comments. What
yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
asterisk.
That's just multiple fonts
That's
in
right.
the translation part.
Absolutely.
I find that works best. A script font. If we
Right.
can find one of those, that'd be
We
good.
do Comic Sans here.
Oh, Comic Sans. No,
Yeah.
that's about my speed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Cool. So 95, you come in. Did you come in as a student? Did you have a position in line with that as well? What was the specifications of that?
Yeah, so I kind of got fast-tracked by the late Jim Richardson, who sometime thereafter ended up becoming the department chair for biology. I think Dr. Powell, who's still around doing all kinds of crazy projects, was chair at the time. I don't think I'm lying. I think that was going on. And so basically I got kind of overcommitted in advance, which was exactly what I wanted to do. You know, as another side note related to just a perspective about the Sul Ross that I didn't know I was about to get into, in a lot of ways, Sul Ross was effortlessly aping the kind of activity and opportunity that A&M was still trying to cling to in terms of reputation. Like, we'll get you out in the field, we'll do this.
Right.
Yeah, maybe one time.
Sure.
But out here, it was, you know,
We are the field.
yeah, they're going to put a backpack on you. They're going to load all of your equipment plus everything everybody else might want to use. If there's more than one car, you have to figure out how to drive both at the same time.
Sure.
Or if there's 3 cars, it gets harder.
Sure.
If there's 4 cars, I think that's almost impossible.
Sure.
I saw Bobby G do it once, but I can't do
Well,
that.
you can do anything. You know.
It helps to have skills.
It's not surprising, but no. I mean, at that time, you said aping. You're sort of like that precursor, establishing that real boots to the ground education, and I think,
Very hands-on.
right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what was the most enriching experience you had in that first preliminary period in your life?
I don't know for sure how to answer it, and I'm afraid I'll be too much of a one-trick pony by just referencing the excellent relationship I had with Jim Richardson. He knew exactly how to exploit me, and that was the best. Being exploited is just a good feeling.
Right.
But he obviously saw that I was game, and he leaned into it. I'm pleased that I wasn't the only student that he found that he could really push to the limit on certain things. He definitely, I think he had a great sense of humor, which I'm sure helps. But like, for example, I'll do a call out. Is that okay? Should I not
Absolutely.
do
Oh,
that?
shout out.
You can bleep me out.
Yeah, we'll just be a long bleep. Yeah.
So like Dr. Christopher Ritzy, who is currently the chair of biology program, is another one of his victims.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I think similarly, we both already had we'd already caught similar bugs before we were here. So we just happened to be the perfect zombies for the particular post-apocalyptic movie that we were going to be in later. It worked out really good, that part.
That's wonderful. Well, we're all about mentors here and like specific people that you're sort of drawn to, and so shout out Mr. Jim Richardson. Yeah, that name looks is familiar. I've done some, sometimes when you're in this department, you kind of look around and see what, things are here. I'm really fascinated in kind of the history of this place just because, we have all the buildings here. We have all the professors here. And starting out, you want to know, at least me, because maybe I'm just sick that way.
Yeah.
I just want to know kind of what's gone on here over the past over 100 years and how things have kind of worked out.
Sure. Let me jump in on that real quick just to make an additional connection. Jim, in addition to being, I think, a very conscientious scientist and a very creative kind of scientist related to ways to get extra bang for the buck out of little projects, he was just creative, and his wife Barbara Richardson, who still does all kinds of media acquisition, very creative, but also a very strong biology background. A lot of people don't know that, and so I think that in a way they riffed off each other on a lot of those paths and opportunities, and that's kind of fun. And I think that was part of what also. Maybe that's closer to part of the stereotype of it, but when you get to have a little bit more contact, a little bit more intimate contact with faculty, you discover different facets of what they may be really good at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part, at least for me, was probably a big first positive dealing with departments at Sul Ross.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's such a niche area that there has to be some sort of commonality that brings you out here. And if it's not a specialization in the outdoors and in, biology and, all these things, it has to be a love and appreciation for it. Or even, an love and appreciation for small, well-knit communities or things like that.
Yeah, there has to be something that describes you.
Yeah.
So I just thought of another example of that, and another expansion is that Jim played French horn. And so he didn't give me a hard time when I started looking for excuses over the summer, in particular, to work with the. We were doing Shakespeare in the Park there for a number of years,
right.
And another wonderful, hyper engaging experience, whole different set of, muscles and all that. But I could tell he wanted to. I mean, and maybe it would have been different if I'd been playing a French horn.
Yeah, a little bit of a maybe not as what was the term you used? Exploitive, or maybe even more so. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, maybe triple down.
Yeah. But no, that's fantastic. That's another avenue. I'm kind of free forming a little bit just because I use this as an excuse to like really dive into your experience here and getting it on tape. And so with theater. Did you jump into that in the midst of your studies, or did you do that afterwards?
Yeah, no, actually, it was between chapters of things, and I don't even remember how it first came up. There must have been something that dropped out, and at the time, this is going to sound extremely ridiculous, but I think I was just really, really, really rebelling on some of the written word things, and I was just all excited about Shakespeare. I was reading it on my own, really cool. And then suddenly I run into people like Chuck Pulliam, Greg Schwab, later Donna Roman, these people that are just like, hey, what, do you like this? You like reading? Well, I like reading pretty things.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, in some ways maybe it's ironic in my head. I really like reading scientific writing, but it's a different set of muscles. It pulls differently. And I wouldn't say that they're interchangeable things, but I think a case could be made that they're complementary, at least depending on circumstances. And
Well, what about acting? What a performative sort of aspect? Was that something that was very natural for you?
No, I'm still getting used to it. Everything I do now, of course, is acting.
It's performative.
It is performative. And I go to a lot of meetings. Has that ever come up before? I don't know. I go to a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
And I make a lot of arguments. I do a lot of improv. I lose arguments. And then I get told that everything's fine.
Yeah. And then you get an Oscar immediately after.
Immediately afterwards.
That's right.
Yeah, and then they take it away later.
Yeah, they go.
It's a loner. It's the loner one.
Yeah.
They have a bungee cord attached to it. It's very strange.
Dear Lord.
Yeah, I've been hurt by one before.
Goodness, that's elaborate.
Yeah, this
elaborate
left
system.
shoulder.
Oh, whiplash. Got you.
Whiplash from the bungee cord from the Oscar.
Gosh.
It's not the real one though. I think it's just a stand-in Oscar.
Well, yeah, the real one perished long ago.
Oh yeah.
100%.
Boating accident. I heard.
Oddly
Very
enough.
strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think bungees were involved
At all. Well, there's an example.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. You just did that for the audience, free of charge. By the way, there's no money involved in this.
$1.99 per hour.
That's right.
Oh, that's too cheap. Probably $1.99 per minute.
$1.
I need to work on my voice.
I wonder. I don't think they do that anymore. Those like toll-free numbers where it's like if you pay.
They probably shouldn't, right? Weren't they? Didn't we decide they were all like horribly
I think so.
non-ethical?
Yeah.
We'll ask Bobby G later.
I
he
think
doesn't
he
know
knows.
we're in here right now, right?
No, he doesn't. It's an empty room. It's just us.
Oh yeah.
He's gonna find out later. Yeah, I think there was one where you could call the number and you can like openly sob and cry. And I don't even think it was like to like a licensed professional counselor, like we have here with counseling accessibility or anything like that, which is a good thing to do.
Right.
Not call this number and pay money for maybe some person don't know where they're at to just listen to you.
Well, you know, I think for a while we did that with Blackboard support. But That also may have not been ethically acceptable. I don't
man,
know.
Tim's ears are ringing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he's making some money on the side, though.
He has a toll-free number.
If it's a good hustle.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll ask him about that later.
Yeah.
So that's shout out. Let's see. We've had a few names. I'm just going to backtrack. So we've had Jim Richardson, we've had Barbara Richardson, we've had Bobby G, and we've had Tim Parsons. So that's all shout outs here, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to make sure that's on the transcript.
Sure. Should I just go through other shout-outs?
I think
shout-outs?
whatever names you can think of.
I always like to pick on folks that have been more or less on the scene as long as I have, especially when they're in varied capacities. So I think Miss Estella Vega has to be drawn and quartered whenever she's witnessed on site. She's so critical for all of our solutions getting implemented for admissions and sort of student experience and things.
Graduate level, for sure.
Yeah. We can't make fun of her enough. Tim Parsons has actually had 2 lives with us, and I think he's enjoying the second one more than the first one, but that's just because his memory's so bad.
Gotcha. That's the only way you can really enjoy it, is if you have a fresh perspective.
I think so. I've been hearing about all these people with total recall and everything, and I don't care how happy they look. I know that I wouldn't be able to be. That would be just miserable, knowing what you did like 10 minutes ago.
Well, that's the state of existence I live in constantly.
That's Cecil.
Yeah, totally. At random moments, you know what I mean? Like, you remember, and unfortunately Facebook makes it for this, where you get memories and you have like your, philosophical epiphany post when you were 17, and no one wants to hear that. The unfortunate thing is for me, I get to relive it. And so, I'm like, oh, you're such a little genius. I don't know if any of this is usable, but it's going to stay in.
Oh, good.
And I'm going to segue. So at A&M, you said you had your marine biology degree. And at Sul Ross, was it a Master of Science in Biology that you?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really cool. Just wanted to get that for the record.
Well, and I think a lot of folks don't know this, but I was pursuing a doctorate at New Mexico State for a long time.
Really cool.
I worked with an interesting group that was dealing with, it was really more of a population bend. And unfortunately, I think they ended up having major complications with a NSF grant, among other things. But interestingly, it was the passing of Jim Richardson that brought me back to classes here. And so I was an instructor for the university for a time before we were able to get a permanent fit, and we ended up with a really great one, who I won't name because I don't want to add compliments to people. But it's just interesting how that path can lead. And but for that project, I got to play around in the San Mateo Mountains and get really, really allergic to oaks, which was very exciting to have happen since I was dealing with oaks.
Yeah.
And gall forming wasps, a really nice little project.
Dear Lord, so that was your red and puffy era.
Yeah, but only near the end. I had no idea it was coming. When it actually hit, it was very hard to drive.
Those 4 cars at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I don't blame you. That would be the end point of that particular journey.
It was a little tough.
Cool. Well, we'll kind of stop right there, and we're going to take a little break because we do have sponsors here. Believe it or not, we do.
We love sponsors.
We need sponsors for podcasts. It's kind of a requirement. And so got to get the formalities out of the way. But we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Kendall Craig. Cool. Well, we're back now. Surprise. We're back now with Kendall Craig. See, I did it. That's good. So let's talk about what's going on today, or maybe even after your time as a professor here, leading into
today. So
Oh.
what happened? What happened to you?
Well, basically, someone threw a grenade on the floor and then said, "Oh, it's a Cinnabon," and so
Yeah.
I jumped for it and
Blindly.
and then blew up.
Yeah.
Basically, I ended up getting involved with some special programming things. First, as a curriculum development specialist, so it's basically just dealing with trying to be problem solving for STEM fields. I think that's accurate to say. I don't think I'm lying. And basically there were just a lot of facilitating things that seemed over and over again that if they were addressed properly, they could save time and ultimately either create or save money for others. And so that's kind of been the mindset that I've had in terms of department-centric ideology. The other thing is, if you could just look at something and say, oh my goodness, if we can land this, the kids are going to get to play with this. You know, that was just that kind of direct math. And even though I think I strike a lot of people as being very complex and multifaceted, if the math can be simple, I just think it's better math.
Absolutely. Yeah,
undeniable.
undeniable.
The bigger the lie, the better. You know, it's just A plus B equals C.
You're like,
wonderful. French kiss.
That's right.
As Mr. Parsons would say. Yeah, doesn't get better than that.
So in terms of going from being, start out as a student, you go into your doctoral area, you go back to Sul Ross as a professor, and then you're transitioning to sort of this background, logistics base, everything sort of functioning, making sure that systems are in place and working, which is, it can be a thankless job, but really essential and, necessary, and, something that you can definitely excel at. Has logistics always been sort of a prevalent part of your life? Maybe coming with your science background, has it shifted? Has it changed in nature for you?
Yeah. So, so the main upshot is that it changed drastically and pretty quickly, and it changed more than once. So one of the big things was that I was so steeped, and this goes far beyond my personal philosophy and arrangement on this, but I was so steeped with scientific methods and the cause and effect related to funding for those things, and even a sense of time that goes with those projects, that was very, very it was a very interesting adjustment to dealing with just higher ed alone. But then subsequently, it was a big wake-up call to see how challenging it was to bridge between other components, other groups, the TEA, for example, THECB, Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, our own authoring and approvalship through our accreditor, the Southern Association of Colleges. All of those are on different camps completely as well. Currently, I deal a lot with the Department of Education. Completely different measures of success.
Right.
Completely different hopes and dreams that aren't expressed on paper. So you've got all these outward-facing expectations and methods, and then you've got all those behind-the-scenes elements that also have to be ticked off in order to know that you have any chance of actually conveying your want, much less having success. Success, what a horrible word that is. But just to get everyone on the same page, that was a big realization. These are all groups that, in theory, have the highest of investment, obligation, but also hopes just related to a higher ed success, and yet they're all speaking completely different languages from each other. I would argue. So they use a lot of the same words, but they use them in different ways.
Right. So you're the ultimate translator.
No, I'm not. I'm not. We really should do something about that. We really should have someone to do that.
That's an issue. Okay. Got you.
Yeah.
Do you foresee, maybe within the time when you started down that avenue up until this point, has there been any improvement or any efforts to improve?
So I'm not going to answer the question, right? That's something that we learn pretty quickly in academics. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to deflect a little bit. I'll answer it in a sense because I'll agree with the second bit that you were launching in on. There have been a ton of extremely courageous and creative and maybe even right-minded efforts to do some advanced bridging, but I think it's always outpaced and outstripped by new dictation from above, new weird complications. We're never, I know there are a lot of folks out there that aren't going to ever mention COVID-19 ever again.
Yeah, no,
But we are never going to stop mentioning it because
Right.
we're still working it out. We're still trying to figure out what happened and whether there's anything that is valuable to us to make interpretations from. Just how many other things will just be discovered if we just look at the same things with different eyes. Unfortunately, I think we all got really teased thinking that might be an opportunity to start some new things, some genuinely new things. But other than the technology push, it feels like we've been more on a quest to largely retreat back to some of the safe things that we thought were safe that weren't ever fully fleshed out and working.
Gotcha.
I know I'm super vague, but that's part of my
Well,
thing.
it's a lot to it, and this whole time, I'm part of what I'm hoping to do is to let our viewers know, and I think you've succeeded within some previous statements, boiling down just how the multiple facets and just the nuances of that job, which is basically taking all of that verbiage, taking all of these different requirements and guidelines, and if you don't do these things, you're not going to get accredited, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, things that the average person or college student or employee,
Right.
and at any stage of this institution and any other, take for granted or don't even think about. And there you are fighting the good fight, or advocating, or being one of those eyes that are looking at certain policies or anything pending that'll be an asset to this university. And you're one of those preliminary spots in it. And I think within talking about logistics and things like that, and how that's how that has been altered or changed within you. You mentioned off camera that it's not mathematics. It's not a perfect even addition. It's not A plus B equals C. It's nuanced, and it's political, and it's social, and it has world and governmental and societal implications and effects on it. And I think that's noteworthy to sit here today and to just outline that and just let people know that there's a lot in running a university, and there's a lot in maintaining these programs, and it's remarkable.
There really is. And one thing, I'm glad you called me out on the A plus B thing. I think another interesting byline for that, I guess, is to bear in mind that when you aren't 100% bound by that kind of very strict cause and effect language and element, you also open up the realm of these things that I'm just going to call them miracles. Because if someone's willing to sidestep the entire process and say, oh, I think we can come up with a fix for that, and it was never going to be on the table, but now suddenly here it is, and suddenly we can move on. I mean,
That's godsend there.
Yeah, and it totally messes me up every time because I'm much more of a, I think I covered it before. I'm a bad person. Have I mentioned that? I'm evil.
Off camera, you're very you stick to that sort of label.
Yeah, and I'm good at it.
Yeah.
So when these other things happen that are so delightful and so opportunity rich get dropped in our lap, which happens periodically. It messes me up.
Yeah.
But I'll take that all day long over.
I think you've surpassed devil's advocate, and you're just straight
Devil.
up, just devil. That's great.
Yeah.
I like that dichotomy there.
Me too.
No, it's really cool. And very noteworthy. So kind of segueing into your titled position now, which I understand is Executive Director of Title III and Title V. Is that correct?
I'm sure it is.
Cool. I'll check with HR later and find that you're not in the records at all.
I'm not even supposed to be here.
Yeah.
They'll have to walk me off campus.
Goodness gracious, I knew it. So as your current position stands, you said you deal with DOE, Department of Education, a lot. If you were to boil it down to a brief synopsis, how would you describe your position?
So it's a bit of an experiment. It's been made possible by the likes of Dr. Bernie Contenius. It's been made possible by Dr. Eric Funasaki out of the Sponsored Programs Group.
That's the provost and the dean of sponsored programs.
Okay.
Okay.
Now it's openly advocated by Dr. Lewis Harvison, who's got a structural position over that and deals with special funds, and also the legacy of other folks. I think that we're working toward this kind of thing, but in a sense, we're trying to kind of do a grow up directors program from within. I think that's part of the experiment, and so we've got some excellent folks. Mr. Joe Wagner, we've got Miss Maya Vaughn. I'd worked with Hadley Kibbe at one point, and I think part of the idea is that we'll try to get some good resources sort of nested for some of the apparently forthcoming additional grants. We just had another Title V PPOHA grant that we're calling Water in the Desert, I guess for short, and it deals with one of it's our first PhD program that would run out of water sciences and natural sciences there. I think maybe the water sciences is a nuanced subcomponent. It also deals with anthropology. And there's just a bunch of exciting things happening from one grant launch. Yeah. And those program builder grants have the capacity to do such transformative things. It's a really nice thing, but every time that we launch one of those activities, we're often starting over from scratch with part of the institutional memory and also just the kind of the rules of the road. Even the Department of Ed has so much pressure to rebrand itself and to present things as, hey, this is totally different from everything you've seen. And then horrible people like me want to raise a hand and say, no, it's actually exactly the same.
Right, and you're able to cite that instance and when it happened and what you were wearing that day and what you had for breakfast.
Pretty much. I'm probably still eating it.
Yeah.
And then we can move on to the how does it apply and how does this represent something truly novel and transformative? And it's all a gift. We have some, for that matter, I'll do a shout out to I shouldn't never do this probably, but my program officers are fantastic. Dr. Robin Dabney has been working with a number of our activities out here, and Dr. Margarita Melendez they're saints on earth trying to get good opportunities in front of good kids, and at the end of the day, that makes the air a lot easier to breathe, having those kind of people. All of our academic deanship here are so supportive of the student opportunities. It's crazy. And I guess I could list all their names.
Absolutely. This is the episode of shout-outs, ladies and gentlemen. So,
okay. So Chapter 12, shout-outs. So Dr. Bonnie Warnock, who is another A&M kid. I was at school with her as well.
We're trying to get her on the show.
Oh, you should.
Yes.
You should just threaten a subpoena or something like that. I'm sure it'll all come together. That worked on me.
Sure. Yeah. I had to pay extra for that.
Well, we have to pay the iron price for our bliss.
That's right.
So, Dr. Barbara Tucker with a professional studies group, of course, Dr. Laura Payne, who actually fought for structure to be specifically conducive to part of the physical arrangement we have for the grants now. Thank you very much. And Dr. Sally Roach, I believe, is going to be sliding into another element there. Worked with her for many years. So key to getting our writing center off the ground. I mean, just really wonderful people. We've got a whole bunch of other positions starting, but I don't want to speak to that because until
fine.
I meet those folks.
We'll wait for an announcement, and it'll be a grand reveal.
Grand reveal. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Do we have a special effect for that? Can there be like
we might, some air horns and some confetti blowing out the bottom. We're gonna make Bobby's job just really hard for him.
He can just edit it out, right? If it doesn't fit.
That's right. Cool. Cool. So Dr. Payne, Dr. Warnock, Dr. Roach, Dr. Tucker, right?
Yeah, but Dr. Barbara Tucker with a professional studies group.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just making
No,
sure.
no. But it's interesting. It's easier for us to look kind of at that one level, even with the changing structure with the RGC setup and everything at our campuses at Eagle Pass. It still gets very tricky with everyone changing roles beneath there. We've got program heads, we've got department chairs and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think everybody knows everybody. They just don't necessarily know what.
Sure.
What. Speaking of my silly title, it's difficult to figure out what everybody else is doing, and also what their special charge may be in the moment.
I think that's just a indication of celebrity. You're like, talk to this person, this is going to happen. Talk to this person, this is going to happen.
That's
talk
right.
to Kendall,
and you're sure to have nightmares. but also those there's no such thing as bad fame, isn't that?
Yeah, bad publicity.
Yeah, doesn't Bobby
yeah.
G say that all the time?
Any chance he gets.
That's yet to work out for me. All my stuff has just resulted in a blotter at the police station. They probably do it digital now, though, right?
I think so.
Yeah, that's right. That's how my last experience was.
Yeah, so you're safe.
Cold and calculated. Yeah.
Cool. So we talked about the importance of grants and what implications that can mean on program being created, certain people being hired on and providing excellent work for students and for student support and opportunities. You mentioned institutional memory, which is just something that I'm hoping to gain as a young staff / professional, is to kind of gain insights and kind of learn, by rote or from looking at, brand yearbooks. The brand is an old yearbook that Sul Ross used to have, and lots of things that you can sort of gather from that, which is why names like Barbara and Jim Richardson sound very familiar. David Cockrum sound very familiar.
Sure.
Never met him, but having that sort of insight into how that can kind of affect today's sort of atmosphere is really important to me, which is, I guess, why I spend hours doing that instead of my actual job. But you also, and I'm reading straight from your bio, if it's okay, because
I didn't know I had one.
You do?
That might be from the police also.
Yeah. There was a lot of other things I skimmed over, but 3 things: institutional memory, academic focus, and student opportunities. And to kind of close today, which I hate to do, I wish we had 4 hours to do this. What, if you were to speak to any of our students here, undergraduate, graduate, how would they be able to ensure that they succeed at Sul Ross from your perspective and your experience here?
That is a tough question, and it makes me want to answer with much more answer than we have time for. But one of the things I would argue that everybody needs to do, everyone who touches something that's like an opportunity mill, as this can be, but on both sides of the equation, by the way, is constantly revisit your definition of success. Don't give short service to an interesting opportunity that came up that wasn't part of the original plan. Be able to maximize off the energy that can generate on its own. It's always easier to toboggan down the hill than it is to push a department chair to the top of the hill with you. I think I've done both. And ways.
More specific, yeah.
We got to avoid that.
We'll stop the shout outs at that point.
for just that moment. But that's the first step, I think, is keep a do-over button ready for success, so that you can take full advantage of the unusual opportunities that'll fall in your lap. Even now, even in this day and age, I would argue that the hands-on opportunities for the folks on both sides of the equation here are vastly superior to the ones that I had worked with elsewhere. And so if you can figure out that part, who knows, you might end up in a photography class with Bobby G and learn something about composition. And then you can come visit Kendall and see a million things that have absolutely no compositional value, but might still be amusing.
Sure, like an abstract piece, like a Pollock. It's just color.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like a Pollock.
Yeah. I mean,
could you imagine?
Yeah,
That'd be great.
I think it'd be fantastic, and I think it is great. And I think the time that we've spent here has been great, and I'm just very thankful for your time. I always enjoy talking with you and hearing your insight and learning something new. I think that's what it boils down to. And
Me too.
I know you say you're an awful person. I don't think that.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'll be on record by saying that it's been a pleasure having you here, and I hope we have you on soon.
Well, me too.
And I hope I can keep going on to make you more uncomfortable with all the positive things that I say about you.
Yes,
Because that's also part of my enjoyment.
very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
now. Thank you.
Mission accomplished, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Well, we'll have you on again soon. But for now, we're going to go ahead and dismiss and just end with a little Go Lobos. Oh.
This is great.